Before we get into discussing best practices, success stories, and learnings from the last year or two, I thought it'd be good to kind of go back a year or so. And maybe, Liz, we can start with you to talk about kind of the early days at your company. What was sort of the reaction among employees as you were thinking about encouraging folks to begin using AI and AI agents more? And how did you manage any, let's call it, hesitation or concerns among those ranks?
I think that's a great question, and I have to own my truth because I was one of the first ones to be skeptical, right? And just wonder, really, how is this creating value? How is this different than any other tool that's been introduced into the workforce? And do we really understand what business issues we're solving with this tool, right? What is the hype around it versus what is the material impact we can have with AI? It was our CIO that kept pushing me to think about more broadly, and then what really got me excited was thinking about how does this shift the capabilities we're going to need more broadly across the organization? Not so much the technology, but how does it shift the ways that we work, connect with each other, and collaborate?
Has your thinking, for anyone here, changed on maybe in those early days thinking, well, this is just a tool for developers, for coders on staff, or for customer support versus for everyone? And when did that shift happen, thinking about who and how to deploy the technology internally?
Yeah, I think at Citizens, we've deployed it across the whole bank, so everybody's got access to it. What we're finding is that, the people in wealth management are starting to use it and develop apps on their own. So they're developing things at home, and they're bringing it into the workplace and saying, how can I replicate this? So then a light bulb went on how easy some of this new technology is to use, especially things like Claude that has just absolutely changed the game.
Right.
So I think what we're going to see is we're going to see less in the hands of coders and more in the hands of the business. So it's going to be a fundamental change.
Kathleen, I remember you saying, I think initially you thought it's just going to be for a select group, maybe not for all.
Yeah, I think we early on learned two lessons. One was around deployment and one was around adoption, and they were both connected. So with deployment, when we first thought about it, there was certainly pockets of the organization that we recognized and there would be a real connection with AI. But then we realized, you know what, there's so much power here, and why would we only give it to the hands of a few employees? Let's roll it out to the entire company. So we rolled out Copilot and ChatGPT to all employees, and then additional AI tools depending upon roles and functions. And democratizing that really was a key step, but it wasn't a game changer, because it wasn't like if you build it, they will come, right? People didn't necessarily understand how does AI fit into my everyday role. And so then we recognized that this wasn't just a tech deployment, this really was about people and what we were doing to through a enterprise-wide change management effort. And so then we shifted our focus there and helped people understand use cases and gave people tools and tips. We call it Ignite AI. And that was what was really game changing for us, was that shift from tech deployment to enterprise-wide change management behavioral shift.
You kind of alluded to it, but I think all of you, or most of you, have pretty intentional programs now in-house to get people comfortable with this technology. Some of it may be mandatory, some of it may be not. Can you kind of walk me through, Jamie or Liz, how you think about the in-house training programs, upskilling there?
Let me, just before we go to that, sure. I wanted to comment about the technology. I agree Please. With Kathleen, right? It's, the tech is evolutionary for us. It's proven to work. It's all right now the deployment, that scale, and the adoption. That's the hard part. What Liz was saying, the workplace is fundamentally changing, right? So speed, workplace is changing. How we execute, changing, right? How we learn, that's hard, and that's changing. Leadership, foundational things, creativity, how we actually ask the right questions, how we can be uncertain, right? That's a uniquely human thing. All of those, they don't change. That's a consistent thing. I think that, adopting this broadly, I think to Kathleen's point, the organizational change management, that's hard. Change is hard for a lot of people, and you have to go at their pace as an individual. I think you have to paint a picture of how, especially the agents, can be sort of part of the workforce, not as a member of the workforce, but more of this is a way to do more intelligent work by using agents to do that. So that's how I see it.
Kathleen, I recall your program is something, there's a mandatory component to it, is that right? You want to tell us a bit about that?
We had mandatory training. We looked at starting with our leadership. I think what's a little different here is also thinking about the role of the leader, and even in terms of capabilities of leadership. Technology is becoming so much more important as a core foundational leadership, not in the sense that people need to have deep technical skills, but people need to be able to understand like sort of how to reimagine work and how to help get your employees excited and confident in using it. So we have Lead Forward is a management training program for executive officers and our managers that help with this sort of change management component. And then from an AI perspective, it really did start at the top and it cascaded down. And then there were things that we required people to do, but then there was a lot of opt-in. And like I said, that Ignite AI program has just been like, there's such enthusiasm around the company.
Jamie, I think when we spoke, you mentioned that you have pretty clear metrics that you're using to track both the adoption of it and the productivity gains from it. Can you kind of walk us through that and how those came about? What you're
we use AI to have value, right? So there's value in terms of productivity of the workforce. There's also value in enabling our customers to have their strategy go a little bit faster. So there's balance there. On the productivity side, we look at this. This is the next wave of, there's automation, there's all kinds of AI. This is a story that's a continuum, and we're seeing that come up. The way we approach it, similar to the comments of the rest of the panelists here, is we make it a very much a personal thing. So at an individual level, we want to take work off people. We want to free them up to do other things. We inject education so there's something in it for them. What I've found is most people want to learn. Most people want to develop their career, especially the technical groups that I manage. They want to do a lot more. They want to do different things. So if you can enable that, that works very well. On the business side, right, when I talk to customers, it's an accelerator. That's where we see it. It's yes, it's a way to be competitive in pricing. That's one thing. But ultimately, it means, well, there's fewer defects. There's more predictability. There's a better way of doing things at a speed of execution that we haven't done before.
When we cover the technology, we often think that it can be lumpy. There's some categories where it's immensely helpful, and there's others where maybe a little bit more flawed. I wonder if you're the brave among you want to talk about, what's an area of your business where it's been uniquely helpful and an accelerant, and what's a department or area where you're figuring it out.
I think from a software engineering perspective, it has definitely been a game changer.
Sure.
When I look at the stats last month, we've generated now 3 times as much code as we were last year. So there's definitely adoption across all of our developers, and they love the technology. They're now using it as well with our business partners to generate business specs, generate user stories, groom user stories. So definitely across that whole SDLC life cycle, I'm seeing that shrink. And it's very easy to measure, right, because I can measure the number of commits of code, the lines of code, the defect ratio of code. So it's a lot easier to measure. Where we struggle is it's very hard to measure that productivity across the whole company, right, where, to Jamie's point, yes, we think there's efficiency, but when it's just a lot harder to measure if someone is doing a PowerPoint a lot faster than they were, before. Right. What we found hard, I would say, is on some of the business use cases, it really exposes the quality of the data that you have. And what you find out is that many of the procedures are incorrect, or there's different versioning of it, and AI is relentless in finding that. And you've got to have that human in the loop that's validating the quality of that. Right. And what's happening is some of those business use cases take a lot longer to get in, but once they're in, they are truly adding value. So a good example is a knowledge management system that we've used for our customer service reps. So now they can type in a question from a customer, and it will give them the answer for what product they should advise that customer to take. So it speeds up the call handling time, gives better experience to the customer, measured by NPS scores. But it took us a lot longer to deliver that because of some of the data quality challenges we had.
Does that resonate with other folks here in terms of, yes, on coding, for example, it's an accelerant, but maybe some other areas harder to figure out?
I will share that for us. I think lumpy, is that how you described it?
That is what I said. Feel free to use your own word.
So where it felt lumpy is where we didn't understand what we were solving for. And we were just taking the technology and pointing at it, which is great that we're curious and excited about it. But understanding how that's going to drive value across the organization, and it goes back to, I think, Kathleen, some of the work you're doing around training leaders and helping the organization more broadly understand how to develop a use case. What does that mean? What does that look like? Are you solving an issue for yourself as an individual? So how can I be more productive? Or are you solving something more broad across the ecosystem? And how is that interconnected to other parts of the organization?
If I could, I'll add on to Liz, is one of the hardest things for us is teaching people to think differently. So that's really hard, right? Because it's based on years of experience and getting people to ask the right questions, right? That's because most people come into a problem that they're certain of the problem. They're not certain of the problem. They don't really know. They're actually uncertain by definition. That's why we have a problem. So asking the right questions and getting to the point, but then also being able to, Michael said, the human in the loop, or how you actually pair with that. AI has AI always gives you an answer. AI is never uncertain. So the balance between asking the right question and being uncertain and iterating there with the data problems, that's hard. That's really hard. But it centers into the teaching people to think differently.
And I think it's also, like we're thinking about it a little bit twofold, like to your point, Liz, like there's certainly avenues where we have employees just experimenting and thinking about how they can do their job differently and coming up with some really cool work. But in terms of big bets, we're being very deliberate as a company, and we've really identified where we think we know we're going to have, we're shooting for better outcomes for our employees or our customers. Like there's a real clear goal and direction, and then taking that and like sort of self-funding the next set and like really trying to drive transformation that way, but really narrowing it down to those few things that we think are really going to be able to deliver value to the customer.
Certainly in our world, including today, I think at the top of the Bloomberg terminal for a lot of the day was a story about Standard Chartered cutting staff in part because of AI, or maybe entirely because of AI. I don't think I've seen comparable announcements from the group here, but how do you think about what the staffing needs might look like 12 or 18 months from now as you're watching this technology spread through your organizations? Are there certain arms of the company where you see, yeah, we're going to double down on that, maybe others where you kind of keep it flat or as is?
We've done a pretty deep analysis of that, and we're seeing the jobs really shift, but we're not really seeing a significant reduction. So, as we look at the role, say, of the software engineer, we see some of them will pivot and become more business orientated, maybe product owners who are using some of this low code, no code to develop solutions that still require that logic in the brain. We're seeing we're going to need more testers. Right. The lines of code that are being generated is going to go up exponentially. Someone's got to review that code. You're going to need more software engineers who are very highly skilled in performance tuning and testing. So that type of role is going to increase. So certainly as I've looked at my staffing levels in tech, I don't see it reducing. Now, In operations, it's a little different, right? So where we're seeing a lot of automation, you think of things like claims processing, which is one of the areas where we're starting to explore some of the agentic technology. That, I think, ultimately you will be able to take out heads. And the question becomes, do you redeploy those heads somewhere else? Do you put them into relationship roles? Do you put them into customer-facing roles? So those are the type of things we're thinking about. And we also have a big upskilling program that goes along with that says, here's some of the new roles that are being created.
Does that track for other folks here, the balance?
I think of it more as, for us at this point in time, is not doing, more with less, but like more with more, how we shift to more value-added work and help employees, sort of recognize, like take away some of the more administrative tasks or what it may be to free up capacity to then focus in on really value-added work. It's kind of our focus right now.
Yeah, very similar to us.
Yeah.
It's people want to do intelligent work. Yeah. So the definition of intelligent work is moving fast, and that's normal. I think that the problem statement for me is really on learning. I have to say, at Kyndryl, people are the most valuable thing in the company. People are valuable, straight up. That's what makes the firm. When you look at productivity, question is the people, when they free up capacity, do they learn something new? And what I found is somewhere between 80 to 90%, they do learn. The rest don't. Yeah. And that's kind of the break point for me, is if you're able to learn, we have roles for you. If you're not, then that's a challenge.
Jamie, I feel like you've hit this in different ways in your responses already, but to ask it to you directly, what today do you feel like are the biggest limiting factors of the technology, the biggest headaches or concerns that you see with it? You've mentioned uncertainty as an example of that.
I think it's a behavior and a focus. That's what I see. Right? I love what Kathleen was saying around focus on specific cases. We call them proof of outcomes because there's no proof of concept that tech works, right? It's kind of a done thing from my point of view. But then this mindset change, and there's cultural elements too, depending on what country you're in. It's hard. That's hard. So those I see are the biggest impediments. It's not the tech. It's not the tech. The deployment is focus and money and prioritization. That's it. I think in this adoption, you're going to run into mindset, cultural issues, and really ingrained sort of ways of thinking, ways of working that we're going to have to challenge.
Certainly a big storyline in our world too is that companies like OpenAI, Anthropic, the big model makers, are investing quite heavily right now in forward deployed engineers to help businesses, presumably like your own, better adopt and customize the tech. Do you see, has that been a bottleneck until now, and do you see that as cause for optimism and making the most of this technology in the years ahead? To any folks here?
I guess I can comment on that one. I don't think so. When we look at all these technologies, they're great technologies. I'm not sure which is the one to use. We try to use as many as possible. Make sure we built a framework so it gives our customers options. I'm not sure. I really want to get to the point of this is the one to use. I think there's specific places for different ones, and it depends. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of uncertainty. I don't know. Yeah.
And we've done the same thing, Seth. We've built a very open architecture. So because these models keep leapfrogging each other. So if I want to use an OpenAI model, I can. I want to use an Anthropic model. I want to use Gemini. So I want to use Microsoft. So we've built that type of platform that can take advantage of best in breed. And frankly, you can't get hold of anybody at Anthropic right now. They're not picking up the phone. They are so busy that you just it's. I do think that you have to keep that open mindset and not, as Jamie said, not rely on one tool set for some of this.
Great detail.
I'll just add to that. I think I haven't seen one tool, one size fits all. I think many organizations have to think about what's fit for purpose for them in that moment and what needs continue to evolve. At Panasonic, or our organization, we have so many different lines of businesses, and so the tools have to be relevant to the context of that business. And employees have to understand first they have to understand which problem they're solving for, and then which tool best fits to help solve for that.
We talked a bit about sort of the internal programs for upskilling your own employee base, but the other piece of that is, of course, thinking about governance. I know this is an issue near and dear to your heart. Do you want to maybe walk through a bit about how your approach to that has evolved and whether it's getting harder or more complicated as the technology gets more complicated?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, from the very beginning, certainly governance, security has been top of mind. We're a bank. We're, number one priority to protecting our customers' data. So we introduced a AI council that reviews every AI use case. Every AI use case we've deployed has a human in the loop that checks the output. We've implemented guardrails, but it's definitely getting more, to your point, as we get to multi-agents, it's definitely getting more difficult. So now we've had to deploy things like kill switches. We have to look, not only for, hallucinations, but now are these agents talking to each other? How much tokens are they using? Is it getting out of control? So, I think there's a lot of different things that as the technology develops, we're also having to move very, very quickly to think of our governance processes and what we need to do. And then there's also the threats. Anthropic have just announced Mythos that is going to expose all these vulnerabilities in the code.
Right.
So you have to be prepared to completely change the way that you patch your systems more rapidly than you did before to cope with this, because it's going to surface, these new LLMs will surface more vulnerabilities. So definitely it's top of mind for us.
Liz, I feel like when we spoke, you'd mentioned something like you probably should have given just a little bit more thought earlier on with the government's piece of it. How has that thinking evolved for you?
We continue to evolve it as the business continues to drive the adoption in different ways. So because we have such a diverse business, the state of readiness for each business and how they're adopting and embedding it into their practices and ways of working is different. The thing that keeps me up at night is striking the right balance between the momentum that each of the businesses have around leveraging this and thinking about work redesign, really applying design thinking principles to the user experience there, but it's the agent sprawl and that governance around how do you strike the balance between keeping the momentum going, but understanding what's happening within the ecosystem and the framework that people will operate within.
I agree with her completely on that. I see there's balance. I think that's the word used, and that resonates with me. Security, big deal. Got all the policies around that. I mean, this is powerful stuff. Data is important stuff, right? That's important, and getting all those guardrails right. The inventory around it, that's a new problem. What's the inventory of your agents? I'd challenge anyone to actually know. I don't think they know. Right? That's a thing. But then there's also a balance point of you want, at least I do, I want innovation in the field. I want innovation in front of customers. I want my people to go from an idea to a demo in days. I want to go from a demo into something that's actually in production in their business in weeks. So I do need to encourage the balance of innovation in the field with, okay, well, we got to have all these security controls, and that's a balancing act. I thought that was a great word.
I wonder just, for specifics here, folks, maybe you can each share one sort of standout or early standout example for you of how an AI agent product is being used for you in-house, or one that maybe you've designed in-house, whether it's for external clients or just managing day-to-day workflows, something that you feel like really captures the opportunity of this moment. Happy to go down the road.
Yeah, I think, some of the early wins were in converting from sort of legacy code into, the latest version of Java, say. So, we've been on a mission at Citizens to modernize all of our technology. So over the last 4 years, we've completely moved everything into the cloud, including our mainframe, which is now with our partners here at zCloud. But to do that, we had to modernize a lot of the code. We had to upgrade all the databases. We had to upgrade all the operating systems, change hardware. So we actually used AI to basically rewrite millions of lines of code so we could move it to the, to the cloud. And that would have taken probably years, to do just one application. But we moved thousands of applications into the cloud. Not all of them needed that level of upgrade, but the ones that did, it enabled us to do it in weeks, not months.
So at New York Life, I'm going to give a shout out to my HR team who had created an agent to help with the performance management system. So I expect, like many of the companies here, we set goals at the beginning of the year. We have a mid-year check-in. We have a year-end check-in. And as I expect many people feel, doing performance management is not something that people really, are excited to be doing, right? It's a process that can be tough on people. They don't know how to, maybe showcase accomplishments. Managers may have tough time talking about, having tough conversations and helping give really concrete, actionable feedback. And so we created this GPT that quickly became the most used GPT at the company, and still it's off the charts as everybody is using this thing. And it helps set goals at the beginning of the year. And I will mention that one of the goals that's enterprise-wide that every single employee has is an AI goal that we had introduced in 2024 that really encourages employees to leverage AI for innovative thinking. And then the GPT can help. You can really just sort of dump like what you've done for when you're setting the goals, tie them to the strategic priorities, and then for the accomplishments or areas of opportunity, use it to help really flesh that out. And I think the adoption came so quickly because of two things. It really saved time and effort because it's something that tends to take a very long time for people to do, but also because it was really effective in what it was doing, and it led to much meatier conversations. And as we look and we do some testing and look at the forms, we're seeing much more actionable, concrete, feedback that's being given to employees as well. So that was one we introduced last year and really, I would say, took off.
I love that.
So I'm a flashy lights guy by training. That's what I like. I like the tech. I like the delivery. I was with one of my customers last week. He divulged that he has more than 8 billion lines of custom code that is used to run his bank. That was an interesting number. That was a big number. It was a lot. I was pretty impressed that he knew the number. That was a whole different discussion. As a technologist, what it's been able to do around code, to Michael's point, is groundbreaking. For me, it's solved the Joe Ball question, right? You take, my wife is from South America. If you take a book written in South America, translate it into English, it's English, but you can't really read it. It doesn't make sense. So that's kind of how code works today. You get this COBOL code or PL1 or C, and you convert it into Java. And in theory, it's Java. In practice, it doesn't work, right? So what agentic AI has done for us is it's enabled us to build these frameworks, so with these catalogs, where you can actually recreate the database architecture, you can recreate the environment, you can actually put cloud-native code straight off of a mainframe. I have a general customer, a mid-sized customer for me, has between 20 and 50 million lines of code that is running on mainframes, and I never believed it possible. You saw the cool PowerPoint, but the tech is real and the tech works, and it's solving problems that, as a flashy lights guy, I never believed possible, and it does work. It's pretty amazing.
Liz, I'll toss it to you before time runs out.
No pressure, 31 seconds on the clock.
30 now.
Yeah, well, so I'll talk about one that's near and dear to my heart. We have a couple of different examples I could point to, but this is around how we impact the employee experience. We have over 500 expats from Japan that come every year in April. We kind of switch them out every couple of years, but when you move to a country where you don't speak the language, you don't understand the cultural norms, or you have to figure out where you're getting a driver's license, we have a whole international HR team that supports that, and the team get overwhelmed very quickly. And so what they did was build an agent that helps in their native Japanese language the expat to understand all of the things that they have to do as they begin to transition to the US. And what it does is it exponentially unlocks productivity and potential, not just for the IHR team, but for those 400, 500 expats that are coming into the US and starting to settle into their roles into a new country and having to transition, in many cases, their families and their children. So we've given them the support to be able to do that effectively.